I knew the moment he opened his mouth that the night was going to explode. My sister's fiancé, Brandon Clark, sat at the end of my parents' dining table like he was auditioning to be the new head of the family. He smirked, lifted his wine glass, and said loudly enough for every fork to pause midair, "Ava still hasn't figured out what she wants in life. But hey, some people peak late, or never." Laughter erupted. My mother laughed. My father chuckled. Even my sister hid a smile behind her perfectly manicured hand. Everyone laughed. Except me. I didn't defend myself. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't even blink. Instead, I reached into my purse, slowly, deliberately, and placed my phone on the table screen down. Brandon's grin faltered. He thought he knew me. He thought I was the quiet one. He had no idea what I'd brought with me tonight. If there's one thing you need to understand about my family, it's this. We don't do honesty, only performance. My mother, Linda Mitchell, has built her entire personality around maintaining a flawless image. Perfect house, perfect table settings, perfect children, even when the truth was rotting under the floorboards. My father, Charles, doesn't talk much. He just nods at whoever sounds the most confident. And my sister, Emily the golden child, former pageant queen, social media perfect, the daughter every mother brags about. Growing up, if Emily sneezed, Mom called it delicate. If I sneezed, Mom asked if I was doing it for attention. So when Emily got divorced last year, Mom spiraled. Until Brandon appeared, tall, polished, wealthy-looking. He talked about finance like he invented Wall Street. And my parents adored him instantly because he fit the picture. Me? I always ruined the picture. That's why when Mom texted, "Sunday dinner, 7 p.m., be here," I knew I was being summoned, not invited. A prop, not a participant. But this time, I wasn't coming empty-handed. The moment I walked through the front door, I felt the shift in the air. Not warm, not welcoming, more like entering a stage where I hadn't rehearsed the script. Mom greeted me with a tight smile. "Ava, sweetheart, you're late." I glanced at the clock, 6:58 p.m., 2 minutes early. But with my mother, time isn't measured in minutes. It's measured in obedience. "I'm right on time," I replied. She didn't answer. She just turned and floated toward the dining room like a disappointed queen. The table was set like a wedding rehearsal dinner, white candles, gold-rimmed plates, wine already poured. And there he was, Brandon lounging in his seat, one arm hooked over the back of Emily's chair like he owned her. He looked up at me and grinned. "Ava, you made it. Thought you might bail. Busy night coding your dreams?" Emily giggled softly. I took my seat without responding. Everyone began chatting. Weather, work, gossip, a cousin's baby while I watched Brandon performing. Every gesture was rehearsed. Every brag was polished. Every laugh was just a little too loud. Then he launched into his favorite topic, himself. "So, my firm is launching a new fund," he boomed. "A real game changer. Not that someone like Ava would know much about real-world finance." Mom laughed too eagerly. Dad nodded like a bobblehead. Emily touched Brandon's arm, whispering, "Stop." But her smile said, "Keep going." I kept eating, but inside, I felt the first crack in the evening. This wasn't just casual teasing. This was a setup, a performance, and they expected me to play the fool. Not tonight. I should have known Brandon wouldn't stop with one insult. Men like him don't throw single stones. They throw entire avalanches. He stabbed a piece of roast beef with his fork and looked right at me. "You know, Ava, I actually met a guy at work just like you." I raised an eyebrow. "Just like me?" "Oh yeah," Brandon continued, leaning back dramatically. "Super smart, super introverted, always talking about his side projects." He made air quotes, just like earlier. Emily giggled. Brandon went on. "He built some little app in his bedroom. Sold. What? 7 copies? He feigned deep thought, said he was an entrepreneur." Mom pressed a hand to her chest, laughing too hard. "Aw, that's adorable." I swallowed hard. Not at the insult. At the way they enjoyed it. Brandon wasn't teasing. He was dissecting me, piece by piece, to see how little he could make me. Then he leaned forward, voice dripping mock sympathy. "Honestly, Ava, maybe you should consider teaching coding to high schoolers. Stable job, easy hours, perfect for people who can't get hired by actual tech companies." The whole table fell silent, then burst into laughter. Emily wiped a fake tear from the corner of her eye. Dad chuckled into his napkin. Mom took a sip of wine, pleased. I stared at Brandon. Not blinking. Not flinching. He waited for me to break. Men like him need that reaction. They feed off it. Mom finally stepped in, but not for me. Ava, sweetheart, she said in her disappointed schoolteacher tone. You have to let people tease you. It's how we bond. I felt something cold twist in my chest. Bond? This was bonding? Dad chimed in. Brandon's just joking. Don't act so sensitive. Emily's smile didn't falter. Come on, Ava, it's funny. There it was. The old script. The same one they'd used my whole life. I wasn't allowed to be hurt. I wasn't allowed to defend myself. I was supposed to play the quiet, harmless background character. My throat tightened. Every childhood memory flooded back. Being blamed for Emily's tantrums. Being scolded for achievements that made others uncomfortable. Being told to stay small, quiet, invisible. Brandon smirked triumphantly. He thought he'd won, but he had no idea. I had come prepared. Dessert arrived, store-bought cheesecake my mom pretended she baked. Wine glasses refilled. Everyone loosened up, which meant one thing. Brandon got bolder. He wiped his mouth dramatically and pointed his fork at me. Ava, be honest, he said. Do you ever look at Emily and feel jealous? Emily choked on her wine. Mom's eyes widened with excitement, the messy kind of excitement she pretended to hate. Dad cleared his throat but didn't stop him. I froze. Brandon smirked. I mean, look at her, he continued. He motioned toward Emily like she was a prize on a game show. Successful, beautiful, engaged. And you're, well, he let the silence hang, dripping with insult. Emily whispered. Brandon, seriously. But her lips were still curled in a smile. I breathed in slowly, steadying myself. Brandon leaned forward, elbows on the table. I'm just saying, he went on. Some people in this family made it. Some are still trying to find themselves. Nothing wrong with being a late bloomer. My jaw tightened. Then he added with a laugh so loud it echoed. Or, you know, a never bloomer. That was it. The line, the exact moment the dinner stopped being uncomfortable and became unforgivable. My mom put a hand over his and said, Oh, Brandon, stop! But she was practically glowing with pride. Dad laughed softly. Emily hid behind her napkin. And all of them looked at me with the same expression. Don't react. Don't make a scene. Don't break the illusion. I set my fork down carefully, letting it rest with a soft metallic click. Brandon, I said quietly. He grinned, thinking he'd won. Yes, Ava? I tilted my head. Are you sure you want to keep going? The grin faltered. Only slightly, but I saw it. Mom hissed. Ava, don't start. Start? I wasn't starting anything. Not yet. Brandon scoffed. Relax. It's all in good fun. Unless you're feeling sensitive again? I held his gaze. Calm, steady, unmoving. He thought I was breaking. He thought he had me cornered. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd spent the entire week digging into his life, and the truth I'd uncovered was sitting in my phone like a loaded weapon. Tonight wasn't going to end the way he thought. The air in the room had shifted heavy, electric, waiting. Brandon didn't notice. People like him never sense danger until it's already choking them. He reached for his wine again. So, Ava, he said casually, what exactly do you do all day? Besides, coding your feelings? The table erupted with soft laughter. That was when I smiled. A real smile, calm, deadly, final. I reached into my purse and slowly placed my phone on the table, screen down, right beside Brandon's wine glass. He stopped laughing. Emily frowned. Ava? What are you doing? I didn't answer her. Instead, I tapped the screen, waking it. Brandon's eyes flicked to the glow, and that's when the color drained from his face. Because the first notification wasn't subtle. Right across the top banner, confirmation, Prime Retex investigation file uploaded. A direct hit. Brandon swallowed hard. Where did you get that? I lifted the phone, turned it toward the table, and opened a folder labeled Brandon Clark, Evidence. My mother gasped like I'd pulled out a gun. Ava, what is that? I kept my voice steady. A timeline of Brandon's last year, including the money he borrowed under the table, the failed crypto platform he pitched as a guaranteed profit opportunity, and the shell company he opened in Nevada. Dad blinked. Nevada, Why Nevada? Emily whispered. Brandon. Is she lying? Brandon shot up from his chair. This is ridiculous. I didn't flinch. Sit down, I said. And to everyone's shock, he did. Maybe it was my tone. Maybe it was the fact that he suddenly realized I wasn't the girl he thought he could step on. I swiped to the first image. A screenshot of Brandon on a Zoom call, promising investors a 25% monthly return, illegal on every level. His own voice echoed from the speakers. Guaranteed, absolutely risk-free. Mom covered her mouth. Oh my God. Emily slapped a hand on the table. Brandon? What is this? He stammered. This is taken out of context. I clicked the next file. Bank transfers, dates, amounts, all leading to the same shell company. A perfect trail. Context? I said softly. Like the $18,000 you took from your coworker, promising you'd double it? Or the $12,500 from your gym friend? Emily's face crumpled. You told me you needed that money for a business trip, she shouted. Brandon's breath came fast. Listen. I can explain. No, I cut in. You can't. For the first time all night, silence, true silence filled the room. Mom whispered. Ava, why didn't you tell us? I looked at her. Because finally, they wanted answers from me. Because you wouldn't have listened, I said, just like always. Dad looked away, ashamed. Emily was crying silently. Brandon slammed his fist on the table, breaking the stillness. You had no right digging into my life. I stood up slowly. You had no right stepping into my family, pretending to be someone you're not. He bared his teeth. You think you ruined me? You think you're some kind of hero? I leaned in. No, Brandon. I think you ruined yourself. Emily whispered my name, voice trembling. Ava, thank you. And that was the moment the entire room shifted. The moment the balance of power snapped clean in half. Mom sat back, stunned. Dad put a hand over his eyes. Emily stared at Brandon like she didn't recognize him. And Brandon? He just sank into his chair, defeated, drowning in the truth. The performance was over. And I wasn't the quiet one anymore. The silence after the reveal wasn't peaceful. It was jagged, raw, the kind that slices through the air. My mother stood first. Not to comfort Emily. Not to question Brandon. Not to ask if I was okay. No. She pointed a trembling finger at me. Ava, how dare you bring something like this into my home? My home. Not our home. I felt the familiar sting. But this time, it didn't make me shrink. Mom, I said, are you seriously angry at me and not the man running a scam under your roof? She threw her hands up. This was supposed to be a nice dinner. A family dinner. And you always have to make it about you. Emily whipped around. Mom, what are you talking about? Brandon lied to all of us. Mom snapped. Emily, don't raise your voice. Emily broke. I just found out the man I'm supposed to marry is a criminal. And you're worried about Ava ruining dinner? Brandon slammed his hands on the table. I'm not a criminal. But even he didn't sound convinced. Dad finally spoke, voice low and shaking. Brandon, son, tell us this isn't real. Brandon opened and closed his mouth like a fish gasping for air. It's complicated, he whispered. Emily's breath hitched like she'd been stabbed. Complicated? Her voice cracked. You told me you were trustworthy. You told me you were building a future for us. You told me you were a good man. Brandon reached for her. She recoiled. Don't touch me. He tried again, desperate. Please. Stop, she screamed. The sound shook the entire room. Mom pressed her hands to her temples. This is a disaster. A complete disaster. Dad whispered. Emily, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. But Emily didn't want comfort. She wanted answers. She turned to me, eyes red, breathing unsteady. Ava, when did you find out? I hesitated. About a week ago. A week? Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because you wouldn't have believed me, I said softly. You never do. Her face crumpled, and she sank into her chair. She knew I was right. Mom pointed at my phone. Delete those files. Now. I stared at her. Do you hear yourself? Ava. No, I said sharply. It stunned her. I'd never told her no before. For once, I continued, I'm not cleaning up your mess. I'm not protecting your image. I'm protecting my sister. Emily covered her face with both hands and sobbed. Brandon, trembling, grabbed his coat. This is blown out of proportion. We should talk privately. Emily looked at him with pure disgust. You lied to me. You lied to everyone. And you humiliated my sister. Her voice shook. Get out. Brandon's jaw clenched, but he obeyed. He didn't even slam the door, he just disappeared into the cold night. Mom collapsed into a chair, breathing fast. Dad rubbed his forehead. And me? I stood there, hands on the back of my chair, finally letting the weight of everything settle. This family didn't break tonight. It broke years ago. Tonight was just the first time they noticed. The house felt colder after Brandon left. Not just because the door had opened to the night, but because the truth he dragged into the light refused to leave. Emily was still crying quietly at the table. Dad stood behind her, unsure whether to comfort her or give her space. Mom just stared at the untouched cheesecake like it personally betrayed her. Finally, she spoke, not to Emily, not to Dad, to me. Ava, she said, her voice sharp and exhausted. You need to apologize. I blinked. Apologize? To who? To Emily, she snapped. For ruining her engagement. Emily jerked up. Mom, she didn't ruin anything. Brandon did. But Mom shook her head, eyes wild with denial. No, Emily. This could have been dealt with quietly, respectfully. Ava chose to make it a spectacle. I laughed. Not out of humor, out of disbelief. A spectacle? My voice trembled with a kind of anger I had buried my entire life. You mean, the way Brandon mocked me for an hour while everyone laughed? The way you let him humiliate me because it made you look like the perfect family with the perfect son-in-law? Mom stood up, fists clenched at her sides. You embarrassed us. There it was. The truth beneath every interaction we'd ever had. Not you hurt us. Not you scared us. Not we're worried for Emily. Just you embarrassed us. Emily slammed her palm on the table. Mom, stop! Ava saved me. She saved me. Mom turned on her. Emily, you are overwhelmed. You don't understand the consequences. No, Mom, Emily said, voice trembling but firm. I finally do. Dad stood between them. That's enough. All of you. This is too much. But I wasn't done. Not anymore. I took a breath. Mom, Dad, I love this family, I really do. But you never protected me. You never defended me. You never even tried to see me beyond the role you wanted me to play. Dad looked down. Mom's face hardened. You're being dramatic. I laughed again, sharper this time. Dramatic, sensitive, overreacting. It's the only vocabulary you have for me, isn't it? Emily whispered. Ava, please don't go. I turned to her. I'm not leaving you. I never will. But I am leaving this. Mom's voice cracked. Leaving what? The illusion, I said. The version of this family where no one is allowed to be human unless it photographs well. Dad murmured. Ava, let's sit down and talk. No, I said. My voice was steady now, calmer than I felt, calmer than I'd ever sounded. I spent my whole life being small so everyone else could feel big. I'm done. Emily stood, tears still falling. Ava, thank you. For everything. I squeezed her hand. I did it because you deserve better. Mom took a step toward me. Ava, don't you walk out that door. But her voice wasn't commanding anymore. It was afraid. For the first time ever, she realized I wasn't trapped here. I had chosen to stay. Tonight, I chose not to. I picked up my coat, opened the door. The cold air rushed in. Before stepping out, I said quietly, I'm not the quiet one anymore. And then I left. Not slamming the door, not running, not crying, just walking into a night that finally felt like mine. In the days that followed, everything went strangely silent. No messages from Mom, no calls from Dad. Not even one of Emily's long midnight voice notes. Just silence. The kind that makes you wonder if the whole world is holding its breath. I expected chaos. I expected accusations. I expected someone, anyone, to demand an explanation or to blame me again. But instead, the fallout came from a different direction. 3 days after the dinner, my phone buzzed with a notification. Class action reports filed against Prime Raytex. Then another. SEC opens investigation into potential fraud scheme. I exhaled slowly. Brandon had finally run out of places to hide. 2 days later, Emily showed up at my apartment unannounced. No makeup, eyes puffy, hands shaking. She didn't say anything. She just walked in and hugged me like she was trying to hold herself together. I ended it, she whispered into my shoulder. The engagement. All of it. I held her tighter. I'm sorry, I said. No, she murmured. I'm sorry. For laughing at you. For letting them treat you that way. You didn't deserve any of it. It wasn't everything, but it was something I'd been waiting my entire life to hear. Later that week, a letter arrived in my mailbox. From my parents, a beautiful cream-colored envelope, gold trim, perfect cursive handwriting. Inside was a single blank card. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement of what happened. Just a blank, empty card. A perfect reflection of them. I stared at it for a full minute before I slid it into the trash. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Because I finally understood. Sometimes the closure you're waiting for is never going to come from them. Sometimes closure is simply choosing not to repeat the same story. A month later, I found myself sitting alone in a little cafe near the waterfront. Sunlight poured through the windows. Waves crashed softly against the pier. And for the first time in a very long time, my chest didn't feel heavy. I hadn't won. I hadn't proven anything. I hadn't fixed my family. But I'd done something more important. I chose myself. And I realized something else. Something simple, quiet, but powerful. My silence that night wasn't weakness. It was preparation. And when I finally spoke, it wasn't for revenge. It was for truth. I took a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs. Brandon was gone. Emily was healing. My parents were probably still pretending everything was fine. And me? I finally had peace. Not the fragile kind I used to hold together with forced smiles and swallowed words, but the real kind. The kind built on boundaries and truth and a little bit of fire. As I watched the waves roll in, I whispered to myself, quiet doesn't mean small. Quiet doesn't mean scared. And sometimes, quiet is the loudest victory. And for the first time in years, that felt true.